We're collaborating with Asana today, and this is our agenda for the day. We're going to start off really slow and do some intro. All right, JLo, you got to stop right now. She's trying to get us to party real hard, but first we got to learn something. So we're going to break down what an offer package is today. We're going to have a panel to talk about personal experiences in negotiating. And through all of this, we're going to have some breakout sessions for networking and connecting with others, talking about our experiences today. And so just quick notice that this session is going to be recorded. We will post this on our YouTube channel, and you can watch it, go back and watch it later. This is a Tequeria event. Our mission is to support the Latinx community, build each other up, provide more robust opportunities for professionals in tech, and support all of you today. We have a code of conduct, and we are here to support and uplift each other. So if that is not your goal today, this is not your event. So we want to make sure that this is a space where we can be productive and effective, and let's not target or attack anyone today. Cool. So make sure that you join the fun. We do ask you to unmute yourself, but you can leave your video on, and then during the Q&A, there's going to be an option for you to do and ask some questions. So just raise your hands, or we also have a Slido that you can ask your questions privately, anonymously. And the chat is always active. So please don't feel free to share any reactions or any ideas in the chat. This is our Slido information. So Slido allows you to ask the question anonymously. So you simply go to slido.com, enter El Secreto, one word, and you'll see all the questions on there. And Kat just dropped it in the chat. And then I'm going to, let's see. I'm gonna mute someone right now. There we go. All right. So once again, make sure you unmute yourself if you're able to. Or mute yourself, sorry. We're also here to network with each other, so stay connected. If you've been coming to our Tequeria events, you probably have already connected with a lot of people. So if you see that you're already connected to someone, this is your time to message them, reach out, and actually set up some time to chat. So just 15 minutes, connect with someone else, and make a new friend out there. We want to thank everyone from the Tequeria team or staff. A lot of us are here today. And we also want to send a big shout out to our speakers speaking today. So we have 5 different people. And a special thank you to our partner from Asana. And thank you, Greg, Hillary, and Nadia for being here with us. And now I'm going to pass it over to our team at Asana. So Fred.
All right, thank you, Sal, for that wonderful introduction and just giving context and scope here. So we're going to kick off this event. If you don't have a friend that's already here, please invite them, because we are going to get you to understand compensation. We're going to give you some content and some context so you can actually make that money, right? So first thing that we're going to give you, it's going to be John, who's the controller at Asana. He's going to give you the content, right? And this is going to be understand your offer package, from salary, variables, compensation, equity, all that good stuff. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please give some time here to John.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Thanks so much. Great. Let's jump right in. So you finished your interviews. You are now at the point where you are presented with an offer letter. Congratulations. That's fantastic. What can you expect in that offer letter? So in that offer letter, you will get your base salary, which is the cash component that you see there. Included with that will be maybe some variable comp, like if you're in a sales position, that might be your quota or your target attainment. It will also be perhaps you have like a bonus that's in there, a sign-on bonus, a relocation bonus, maybe even like a company-wide bonus. All the cash stuff will be detailed in that offer letter. Secondly, you'll have an equity component, which we will get to in the slides coming up here. So I'm going to kind of skip this for right now. And the last thing that should be detailed in your offer letter is the benefits. So you'll get, we'll do this in the next slide too, but you'll get an idea of the kind of corporate benefits that the company offers you. Next slide. Great. So the question that we always get asked is, what can be negotiated? And the short answer is almost everything can be negotiated. I say almost everything because there are things in benefits like medical and dental and vision. Those things generally can't be negotiated because the plan goes with the entire company, but almost everything else can be negotiated. The first thing you should think about is your base salary. That's the one that people know you can negotiate. But also the variable pay can be negotiated as well. If you're part of a target bonus group or you have like sales commissions, those can definitely be negotiated. But one thing that I will definitely point out is even if you don't negotiate the variable comp pay, you should definitely understand how it's paid out. Like before you accept the offer, you should understand like if you're on the sales team, what do I have to do? Like, is it just hitting a quarterly attainment? Is it an annual attainment? If you're part of a bonus plan, like what are the metrics that are being measured that help you with that payout? So aside from the money, you should definitely just understand like how that thing gets paid out. Again, we're going to jump into equity in the next one. But what I do want to do is double click a little bit on benefits because, in the past, benefits that companies gave to employees was just like medical, 401k, maybe some PTO. That's totally changed in the current time. Now companies are being really creative about how they incentivize employees. So you have things like, at Asana, we offer 3 meals per day to all employees. We do like a transportation stipend for bus passes for people to get to and from work. We offer like Uber and Lyft credits. We offer gym reimbursement. So these are all things that you should definitely consider when it comes to your total compensation package. It's not just about the base salary. It's not just about the equity. As you can imagine, not having to spend money on 3 meals a day and getting your gym reimbursement, that definitely affects how much money you take home every day. PTO is also something that you should definitely factor into your kind of overall compensation. And that is, a lot of companies like Asana and other ones too are moving more toward this untracked PTO. Sometimes people call it unlimited PTO. You definitely want to understand like how that works. How does that accumulate? How much time can you take off in one block? These are all things that, might be negotiable, on the fringes, but definitely understanding how it is before you jump on board is going to be a key point. Great, next slide. So now here's where we get into the equity portion. So equity is probably one of the more important things you'll want to factor in when you think about a job offer, but it's also some of the times the least understood of it. So startups and public companies offer you equity compensation as a new hire and also for existing employees because it represents ownership in the company. And that's something you definitely want because you want to have a stake in that company as you're hopefully hoping to grow it and make it even more successful. If you're joining an early stage company like a Series A or Series B company, the equity portion might sometimes be a really big factor into why you join and will sometimes be a bigger portion of your total compensation than cash will be. Because if you think about joining an early company, sometimes cash is really important. So they're wanting to keep the base salaries low, but they're going to incentivize you with a big stock option package, which is great because like the more success you have, the more you can kind of reap those benefits. If you are negotiating with an early stage company like that, just bear in mind, you might have more success negotiating the equity component of it than you will the cash portion. Cash might just be targeted to a certain amount. So if you're asking for a 10% increase in your base salary or 10% increase in the equity, they might lean toward equity. So just something for you to kind of keep in mind as you're thinking about the stage of company you're going into. But let's break down some of the things when it comes to equity, just so we can all have some shared language around here, because it is kind of, there's a lot of information to get through here. So when you think about vesting, vesting is the schedule in which your options or your RSUs are earned. So generally speaking, every company is kind of different, but generally speaking, this happens over 4 years. And within those 4 years, it can be different of how you earn them. Some companies do like quarterly vesting, some of them do monthly vesting. This will generally be kind of detailed for you in the offer letter, but it's important to kind of understand that. The other thing to know is like there is a difference between a stock option and RSU. So a stock option is the right to purchase a share at a fixed price. That fixed price is usually called a strike price. And so that price is generally set on your start date. So whatever the stock price is when you join the company, that's what your stock option gets locked at. So hopefully, as the stock continues to rise and goes up and goes higher, you're always locked in at that lower price, which is a great benefit for the stock option. An RSU on the other side is just given to you upon vesting. You don't have to buy anything. So that's just, as you earn the vesting, it's just given to you. You can sell them if there's a public market to sell them in, but those are just deposited into your account on each vesting day. So the takeaway from this is definitely do your research. Equity will be a big portion of hopefully your total compensation package that you think about. And so you definitely want to understand not just the amounts, but how you earn them over time. Next slide. So here we have an example of an option versus the RSU. So you can see the differences here in a kind of potential package that you would get. So the thing on this is that the vesting schedule for both, you'll earn additional compensation as they vest because there's a value associated with that kind of equity component. The main difference here is that stock options you do have to buy at that fixed price we talk about, and RSUs are just kind of distributed. So looking at this example, you may come to the conclusion that RSUs are clearly better since you don't have to buy them. And to that, I would say the answer is maybe. And I know that's not a great answer, but that's kind of the real answer. And the reason that's a real answer is because stock options are more risky than RSUs. So because there's a price that you have to pay for that option, that price gets at the strike price when you first start. Generally speaking, companies will give you more options than they will an RSU because there is more risk associated with that. So if you think about a scenario where you join a company and your strike price is $10, a year later, maybe the stock price has gone down. So now it's at $9.50. If you're thinking about that scenario, that stock option to you is kind of worth nothing, right? Because the current value of the stock is below your strike price. But the RSU, you still have value associated with that. So even if the price goes down, you might not have earned as much money as you wanted, but that still has value associated with it. So because the option is more risky, you will generally get more of those. And so for anybody who's kind of evaluating these two things, you have to think about where your risk profile is. Generally speaking, if you're at a smaller company that's fast growing and it's like a quickly growing startup, you want those increased options. As companies get more de-risked and become bigger, generally all companies move away from options and go more toward RSUs because there is that embedded value and people are joining for that. So almost all public companies, I will say, are pretty much giving out RSUs and have stopped giving out options. But if you're at a pre-public company, getting those increased options could be really, really valuable to you. Next slide. So here's an example of an offer letter that decision that you may face. You have two offers in front of you. If that's the case, that's amazing. Congratulations again. So kind of let's take a look at these so you can evaluate which one you might think is better. So if you just looked at these two offers just on the base salary portion, clearly one is better than the other, right? You have a $10,000 increase in your base salary. But once you start double clicking on the other benefits that are coming in here, it gets a little more complex. So you can see right off the bat that you have more options than you have RSUs in the first offer, but you do have to pay them. So you have 2,000 options at $5. The other one is 1,000 RSUs just given to you. That already right there makes up for the $10,000 in base salary that's different because you're going to have to pay $10,000 to buy all those options. And then that kind of is important for you to think about too, because it depends on what your financial needs and what your goals are. If you determine that you prioritize maybe having cash in hand over the potentially significant value of the equity package, you may kind of lean one way. This is why it's kind of different for everybody. Again, if you look at the fully covered medical in offer 2, it outweighs the slightly more generous kind of meal stipend that offer 1 gives you. So after taking everything into account, you can see the value of these are very different than when you just looked at the base salary. So kind of the key takeaways for all this is, and I hope everybody's doing this, is you should really evaluate what total compensation is. You shouldn't just focus on one thing. You should think about, what is the company offering in general for you and in total? And then you can definitely prioritize what you think is more important for your own needs. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. I know I learned a lot, especially going through this period myself. So definitely thinking of everything that's involved and not just stuck on one singular number. So really excited to make sure that, everyone is walking away with something. Before we break into any breakout rooms, I do want to ask you one question that we had appear here in Slido. How much leeway do you usually have with a base salary negotiation for FANG companies? I heard they don't budge because the offers are generally competitive already. Would you be able to answer that question here for us, John?
Sure. I think this probably does vary from company to company, but generally speaking, I'm going to speak generally, companies do have wiggle room when it comes to salaries. I think there's always a range of where you fit in for that specific job title. And some companies I know will target to the low end of the range because they feel like people are going to negotiate. Some target to the middle. I think we have actually some companies who have said, and they've kind of been in the paper, that even if individuals are not negotiating, the company will still give them the high end of the range because they don't want to penalize people for not negotiating. And certainly we know historically there are certain groups of people who don't feel comfortable negotiating. So these kind of forward-looking companies have basically said, hey, listen, even if you don't negotiate, we're going to give you to the top end of the range. We just kind of came in a little below because we wanted some wiggle room there. But I would say generally speaking, there's always room to negotiate that.
That's awesome to hear. Always don't let the money just leave out there, you guys. Always feel free to negotiate. There is the key thing here. The last question I'll ask then before we go into breakouts is, how do you see benefits changing with the return to work updates happening right now in the world?
Yeah, I think you've generally seen a lot of companies talking about having more remote options, whether it be like a few flexible days a week. There's some companies that have come out and said they're going, remote first, and so you can work remote full time. Yeah, I think there's a lot evolving there. And even, I started working 100 years ago, but even since I started working, there's been tremendous changes in how benefits are done. We never used to have things like free meals or gym stipends or even like transportation to work. I mean, that helps so many people, even people on my team. That's incredibly helpful to have Uber credits. So if you are working late, you can kind of get home safely. These are all things that the benefits team at companies are thinking about holistically to really make an enticing offer.
Definitely. And thank you so much. We're going to go into breakout rooms here. So thank you again for an amazing presentation here, John. With everyone right now, if you haven't been a part of a breakout room, here are a few ways to make sure that you join a breakout room when prompted. You'll see a few of the windows that you see in front of you here below, and each breakout room will last for about 10 minutes. This will be a chance for you to interact and network with some of our other attendees here. And feel free to, take a screenshot of this slide and ask some of the following questions. What is one thing you've negotiated successfully, and introduce yourselves as well here, folks. Without further ado, we'll start getting you guys assigned here. If not, feel free to stay here in the general room and hang out with some of us and some of our speakers if you want to hang out and, listen to some music with Sal and myself here. Okay, everyone, I hope you guys had a great chat here in the breakout rooms. I know I walked away with feeling energetic and ready for this next panel here about our personal experiences in negotiating here. For this panel, we'll actually be having someone from Asana here, Fred, who will be moderating it, and I hope you guys enjoy the conversations here.
All right. Thanks, Kat. Appreciate you introducing me. So just to kind of give kind of outlined here, we're going to have this really great panel talk about their personal experience about negotiating, right? I think John had an overview. He was like, hey, here's the compensation package, right? And so you've gone through the interview panel, you did a great job. They've offered you your package. You did your due diligence like John asked you to do. You understand the equity, you understand the RSUs, and you understand your base, right? Now the ball's in your court. And what do you do? And so I would like our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into some questions on what they see as top priorities and how they kind of go through this process. So to kick us off, we'd love for Rachel to just kick us off with an introduction of both your name, your company you work for, your hometown, and if you had a superpower, what would you want it to be, right? Just a superpower.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Santiago. I work in accounting at Glassdoor. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and if I had a superpower, it would most definitely be to fly.
Okay. Why flying?
Well, number one, I live in Chicago, so I don't want to sit in traffic. So that's my thought pattern there. And then I also love traveling. So
okay. No frequent fly miles. You just get out here. I love it.
Exactly. Just go myself.
Next one is Zerosum.
Hi, everyone. I am Zerosum Diaz if you ask my American side of the family, Saraya Diaz if you ask my Dominican side of the family. I'm a PMM at Asana. And if I had a superpower, I think would be teleportation, because I also love to travel, and I'm based out of the Bay Area, but I have my family in New York. I have my family in Dominican Republic, and I just wish I could go back and forth instantly.
Okay, that's cool. So no one wants to go through TSA. I feel that. And then last but definitely not least, Heidi.
Hi everyone, I'm Heidi. I'm a software engineer at Robinhood. I'm originally from Havana, Cuba, and I'm now based in Seattle, Washington. So, I mean, I was gonna say flying, but now I feel like I need to come up with something else, because this is, or we're noticing a theme here after so many months of quarantining at home. But yeah, I'm gonna say flying, yeah.
Okay, no, I love it. I love it. It's funny because you guys made me step my game up. I said speed because I didn't like traffic, but I was just like, no, flight's a lot better at teleportation. I love it. Yeah. So to kick us off, okay, so you've gotten your package. Everyone on this panel has kind of been in that place where it's okay, you get your package, right? And then now it's time to kind of figure out, like, the ball's in your court, right? So love to kick us off with what has been your top priority going into a salary negotiation and why? Right, and then we'll just have kind of Rachel kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, my top priority going into salary negotiation, two things about me is I'm a mom and I am still in school. So for me, my top priorities is my company going to support my continuing education, whether that be within like tuition reimbursement or some type of like flexible work arrangement. And as that relates, before COVID, where working from home was not as widely as accepted as it is today, I definitely was prioritizing some work from home days, just so that I could have more time with my son, or, you know, not having to take off for things like doctor's appointments and things like that. So those were my top two priorities as I'm going into salary negotiations.
Absolutely, that's really good. Anyone else like to kind of let us know about your top priorities?
Yeah, I think my top priority when negotiating my salary is really thinking about the total compensation. And I think John touched on it. I think previously I used to be so focused on my base salary, but now as I get older and have more experience, I think about what are the benefits that I'm getting? Like, am I going to get breakfast and lunch at work? What are the medical costs? You know, thinking about family planning, are there any benefits related to that? So really thinking beyond your base salary and about your total compensation has been really important to me when negotiating.
Yeah, no, that's really true. I think it's super important, right? Because we get so fixated on that number, right? You get fixated on that, like, just the base. I make this much, and you're like, okay, you start doing the math, not realizing that there are some other priorities and things like that. Anything you'd like to shed to light to, Heidi?
Yeah, I think similarly to Zoraida, I initially, earlier in my career, would look at base salary as the main thing. But then as I started to understand the other aspects of compensation, then I've been moving more towards equity is a big thing for me. And the benefits, there are some basic ones that, like health insurance, are non-negotiable for me. And then others that, you know, are nice to have and yeah.
Absolutely. And I must say, health insurance is a big one. You know, I think that, like, that's something that whether you have a family or whether you're just single and you're just trying to, like, get some things, like go to the doctors effectively and like the dentist, I think that's a huge plus in like packages. So yeah, great point there, Heidi. So, right. So maybe you sat there and you made a list of what's important to you and you have it there. How do you guys go about finding resources to figure out what you're worth on the market, right? Because I think that, like, you can have a number in your head. You could be like, you know, I'm worth $1 million, you know, but how do you figure out what's the comparative on the market? And then the kind of awkward piece of it is, like, how do you then have that conversation with the recruiter or the hiring manager? Heidi, do you want to kick us off there?
Sure. So this question has two parts, right? So the first part is, how do I know what's my worth? And I think one key aspect of compensation, it's leveling. And so what I like to, what I start this process is by asking myself, what level am I at? because compensation bands depend a lot on what level you're at a given company, or what job title or what role are you interviewing for. And so understanding where you stand there, it's super important. And so obviously there are a lot of resources out there, websites online, where you can look up, for my level, these are the ranges of salaries. I personally haven't. It is a good data point, but it hasn't been super precise or accurate for me in the past. And for me, what really has worked is to lean into my network of friends and colleagues. And I know there's a lot of, these are not easy conversations to have of, what's your compensation? So it is really important to know how to approach these conversations. Always giving the other person the opportunity to easily say no if they don't feel comfortable talking about that. But talking to friends and family to friends and colleagues where basically what's their level, what's their skill set, what companies they work for, then you get more accurate real life estimates of what you could be making potentially. And so that is one thing when it comes to knowing my worth. And obviously as time goes by and you start going through different jobs, and you will understand this more and more, and you would rely less on external signals. Now to the negotiation piece, I actually think the negotiation starts sooner. I don't think it starts when you get the offer. I think it starts when you start talking to the recruiter, because of the leveling of the leveling aspect of things. If you're not getting interviewed for the right level, or for the level that really reflects your skill set and your background and your experience, you're starting the negotiation process in a disadvantaged position. And so I think early on, you need to really understand how your skill set and experience matches with the job description, and make sure that you're being considered for a job that's fair for you. And then from there on, I honestly have a very open style to negotiate. I don't like to play games. I don't like to, I'm just very clear about here are my expectations, because I already did the homework of understanding where I stand. I go to this conversation feeling more confident. And then again, I think the one thing that's super important to understand is the concept of leverage. So when you go to a negotiation, what do you have on your side that is going to help you in the negotiation? And I think in this case, obviously your background, your experience, but really, really important is the performance on the interview. And so along with the research of, this is how much I'm worth, or what's my worth in this job market. Mm-hmm. Also putting the work and the effort on preparing yourself for the interview, because there's solid performance on the interview. It's going to be super helpful when you're having these conversations with the hiring manager or the recruiter.
Absolutely. No, I think you dropped a lot of gems on there. We appreciate that. Rachel, Zerosum?
Yeah, I think that everything Heidi said was absolutely on point. I think this question is so important because nobody is going to advocate for you the way that you're going to advocate for you. And especially as it relates to closing pay gaps, thinking of gender pay gaps and pay gaps that are related to minorities. So I think that this arming yourself with as much knowledge as you can as possible going into your negotiation is super essential, and leaning into your network, talking to friends and colleagues about what it is that you should be making, and then using resources such as Glassdoor or PayScale are ones that I've personally used and leveraged to negotiate my own salary.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that those are all great points. I think that overall, when you're trying to figure that out, I think it's I'm a talent acquisition partner. So these are conversations that I have every day. And I think that one thing that I feel like candidates should have is just have that open door policy. If you've done your homework, then the recruiter really wants to get you there, right? So it's just about making sure that you draw the line, understanding what you want, right, and what's important to you. And at the same time, I think that one of the things that's important too is that some of the leverage is your experience. Like Heidi said, definitely how well you do on the interview, And then last but not least, like if you have another offer, if you're continuing to look and looking outward, that's also another way of leveraging, right? You can leverage some offers against each other so that you can get the best outcome for yourself. So, all right. So here's where it's going to get fun. Okay. So the panelists is going to take just 30 seconds, matter of fact, 20 seconds while I explain this, to think about what is the biggest negotiation misstep they've made and what did you learn from the experience? Right? So you maybe don't have to say the amount or the company, but you just have to say, well, hey, you know what, after you signed it or years later, you were just like, I should have did this. Who would like to go first?
I can go first on that one.
Yeah.
I think the biggest misstep I had earlier into my career, especially as I was transitioning into the tech industry, is not negotiating at all, because I just felt lucky enough to get the offer. And I was like, oh my God, I have this offer. I just need to take it right away and not really think about it. And now later into my career, and now that I'm working at like a wonderful company like Asana, I like, people, if you're getting the offer, it's because the hiring manager and the team really wants you to be part of that team. So use that leverage and, you know, really be confident about yourself and what you can bring to the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who'd like to go next?
I mean, I think we've, speaking personally, I think we've all been there where, you know, we just feel lucky enough to have that offer. And we, you know, especially early in our careers where you just are so excited to be getting an offer that you just take the first. And so, I mean, I've definitely been there with, and I think that was my biggest misstep. And I think you learn and you grow from that. And yeah, I would definitely second that.
Okay. Heidi?
I think not leaning into my network. I being an engineer, I have a lot of male colleagues and friends from school. And then at some point I realized that they were talking to each other about compensation, and they were training each other on how to have these negotiations. And it never occurred to me to ask or to be part of those conversations. And I think now that I know, I've definitely tapped into those friends and used those resources. But in the past, it was just me. So I think that the misstep here would be not to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are some interesting missteps, but they're common, right? Just being so excited to get the role, right? And then of course, just not really opening yourself to a network, because it is a difficult conversation. And I would say that like some of the times some things are at a great point, you get the role and you are so taken back. You're like, me? Right. And so it's kind of like a little bit of that imposter syndrome kicks in. You're just like, whoa, like, okay, I am not worthy. Right. And so how do you feel has imposter syndrome ever prevented you from advocating for yourself in negotiation or overcoming it? And like, how does it work into your current day now as you start approaching new roles, really thinking about your worth on the market?
That's a really good question. I feel like as a Latina, I feel imposter syndrome a lot of the times, but thankfully I work at a company that makes me feel like I have a seat at the table and included. I think a way that I kind of fight that imposter syndrome is really like relying on my network and events like this and really building a community that's also transparent. I feel like in the past I was afraid to talk to people about salary or afraid to ask like, well, how much are you getting paid? But the more I grow in my career, I guess the more transparent I feel and more confident in having these tough conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Ivy.
I think kind of related to what everyone has been saying. I also felt at some point in the past that when I got my first job offer in the States, I couldn't believe how lucky it was. I obviously didn't negotiate at all because not only because I was feeling imposter syndrome, I was also completely ignorant in terms of how to even look at that offer. And I felt the imposter syndrome for, I think some people say, oh, I felt it for like a couple of weeks after I joined this new job. And I'm like, weeks? I think I felt it for like a month, and it will come back oftentimes even after that. And this is totally normal. I think you build a lot of confidence by just, consistently performing at jobs and delivering value to the company. And I think, again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to tap into your network communities like this one, to get the content and the context, paraphrasing something that I think you said at the beginning, on how to go about these negotiations. Because what you learn later on is that everyone does it, and it's okay, and they're not gonna pull the offer away from you if you try and negotiate something that's fair for you.
Absolutely. And if I can plus one that, I think it's really about advocating for yourself, right? And coming from our background, sometimes you're not really given that tool or the thought process of advocating yourself because of sometimes from upbringing, right? Or sometimes from literally just imposter syndrome. You're just so happy to be here, right? And so you should make sure that you're doing that. Yeah. So our final question it's not really a question, it's advice, right? So to the panel, it's what is one thing you wish you would have known going into your last salary negotiation, right? That everyone in the crowd can use, that they can take away for their next salary negotiation. Who would like to kick us off?
I can go ahead. I would say for me, just going back to our last points, always negotiate. Companies are always budgeting and they're expecting you to negotiate. So always negotiate, do your research on what it is that you deserve to be paid. And literally anything can be negotiated for the most part. Just have that clear package in mind and know what you deserve.
+1 to everything Rachel just said, really know your worth. Don't be afraid to negotiate, and know that if you're already getting the offer, the team really wants you on board and you did an amazing job in the interview. So now it's your turn to really advocate for yourself and what you need in terms of compensation.
Yeah, same. Just putting the work up front. Super important, both in preparing for the interview and in knowing your worth. And then just find a way to practice and get some exposure to this type of negotiations. And I would like to address, there's one question in the chat around about, so how do you ask people, how do you have these conversations with friends and with family, with friends and colleagues? And do you really say, so how much do you make? So it is super hard. It is really hard to ask those questions, but I would approach it more like, hey, you know what, I got this job offer and I need help negotiating my offer. Would you be willing to help me with this? It would be really, I just don't really know how much how much is fair, like how much I'm worth. Like it would really, if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's totally fine. You just like give them the context and give them the opportunity to say no. But you would be surprised at how willing people are to have these conversations.
Yeah, and I would add that. And then another way to allow it to be a scapegoat is ask them the range, right? Don't be like, I need down to every cent that you make, right? It's like, hey, give me between a $10,000 range, right? So that way you can figure out some wiggle room there so people can make it. Then you can make a choice from there too. So that's really good. Ladies, thank you very much for being part of this panel. I think it's super great to hear from you guys, and also very important, right, for us to have a woman-led panel on negotiation, because I think that's something that's very important. And as we know, the pay equity is a huge thing. So thank you all very much. I think I'm going to kick it over to Kat now, who's kind of maybe answer some questions or kick us off to a break room. Again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists. We did have so many questions coming in through Slido, so I'm excited to share a few of them here. The one that got the most upvotes here, and I will kick it off to Heidi here to first answer. How can you flat out ask what the salary range band is to a recruiter? And if so, would they typically be honest about it?
Honestly, I've never done this. I think this is the type of thing that you can get from online resources like Glassdoor and things like that, where you can get like a really wide range of what the salary is. Then again, the important thing here is the level, because it changes a lot level by level. But I've never asked them directly, so I don't know if anyone else in the panel has and what their experience has been with that.
I guess I would step in as the recruiter on the panel.
Yeah, feel free there, Fred.
I get asked this a lot, and I think that typically a recruiter, you don't want to be dishonest, but you also want, like I said, give the range, right? So the recruiter may give you like a wide range, you know, like, okay, you just gave me $100,000 range, so that doesn't really help me, right? But it's okay to ask. And I think typically in a negotiation, one of the things Heidi said is about leverage, right? And so some of the times you want to ask them the number before they ask your number, right? So I think that it's okay to ask them directly, and if they give you a number, like ask for a smaller range, like a $20,000 to $30,000 range, so that you guys can start the conversation and make sure you're in the ballpark.
Awesome. And I think I'll go down to the next one here. How do you ask for the details on full compensation? I've been in situations where you don't get the full information until you're onboarded. Let's see if Fred, or maybe Fred, if you want to go on there. In the meantime, I find out where the extra source of noise is coming from here.
Sure. I think in terms of the full conversation, I think you shouldn't.
Uh-oh.
Sorry about that. I was muted.
No worries. You're back here now.
Yeah, I would say that you want to understand what your full package is before you sign, right? I think that that's your leverage there. It's like, I'm not going to move any forward unless I understand what the insurance, and most companies should have like a one-sheet or PDF for you, right? And if they don't, then that's a little bit of a red flag.
Any of our other panelists want to chime in on that, or had some experiences where they've needed to ask for extra details before the final signing there?
I would definitely agree with Fred, is definitely know what your full compensation package is before you sign that dotted line.
Awesome. Definitely, seems like it's a red flag for everyone here. If they're not telling you the full details, ask, and maybe, ask a bit more if they don't give it to you first off. The next question then is, I'm based in California and I asked for the salary band, but I was only given the starting point and midpoint. What's a good response so that the recruiter gives the full band of it? And I'll open this up to any of our panelists who may want to answer this one here.
I would say definitely use some of your resources to find out based on your location and your job title, what is a good salary band, what you deserve to be paid for your specific job title and job responsibilities. I think coming back with that information, like, I found this is the band, does your company align with this salary price point?
Couldn't agree more, Rachel. And I know you've already mentioned some great resources like Glassdoor and PayScale were some of those that you mentioned here earlier. So definitely the resources and just asking those networks and maybe some of those male colleagues of ours that are having those conversations just to make sure, we're within range here. For the next one, I'd love to ask here for the panelists is, I've gotten conversations where the recruiter mentioned that the salary is non-negotiable. Should I still try to negotiate in this situation like this? And this is open to anyone who's had this experience as well.
One quick thing here is that I would, do you have any, I would ask if you have any reason to believe that other people have negotiated and they're, because yeah, it might be that that's the policy of the company. Unless you have like very concrete examples of people that or your network that have gone through the interview process and have definitely negotiated. So that is one case. But I think then breaking down the salary and the total compensation, like John did at the beginning, you have the base salary, you have equity, you have benefits. So what I would ask is, what part of it is non-negotiable? Like maybe base salary is non-negotiable, but maybe other things are. So I think just like trying to dig deeper and trying to break things down a little bit, so to make it easier for them to shine some light into what's negotiable and what's not.
Yeah, I just want to chime in here. I've been in this position, and I know that I work with recruiters a lot, and a lot of recruiters try to kind of just make their job easier and just be like, this is my best, and it's non-negotiable. But I think that's never truly true. I think like there's always room to close that candidate, and they have pressure from the hiring managers to close them, and sometimes they just want to kind of make it easy and just like try not to get into negotiation. But I don't know if it's very common that it truly is non-negotiable, like bumping the bonus, like Heidi was just saying, or like bumping the equity is always like possible, or maybe doing a little bit more cash just to close that candidate you really want. So yeah, I think it's just a tactic. So you got to be aware that people will tell you non-negotiable and hope that you bite on that.
Yeah, and I just saw some folks over here. One of our own attendees said, I negotiated at a company that claimed that it was not negotiable, but they gave me a sign-on bonus. So I think it's definitely looking for some of the other areas that are a bit more negotiable than here. But excellent question here for those that posted it here on Slido. The next one I have for the panelists then is, can you share an example of a time that your negotiation didn't go as you hoped for? And I think you already answered this here perfectly, but if you have, one more piece of advice you want to share here with the attendees, I'll open it up to anyone who wants to take this first here as well.
I would say on the recruiter end, and also as a candidate, sometimes there's like sometimes you may be the finalist and there'd be other people with other that are in line, right? So sometimes just the timing doesn't work, right? Maybe you're negotiating and then they really need to close the record at a certain time. So you want to understand what the timeline is. So I think that like that's something that kind of happened in my world a little bit, is like really understanding someone's timeline. Maybe you have a bunch of other offers and the recruiter is really trying to close during that week or two, right? So that's sometimes where things kind of get crossed in haywire, because it's like, hey, someone else is available and they're ready and they're willing to negotiate at that time. But that's not as often, but that's another possibility. I would also say, as for me, something that Heidi said that's super important is understanding your worth and like actually going into your network. And so I did not understand the worth and the value during this negotiation. So I was aiming too high and I was playing ball too high, and it was actually to my detriment. So yeah, so understanding your worth within the market and leveraging the information from people around you, super important.
Really great advice there, Fred. I think I've definitely done the same, where I was like, I need to know before I go into these conversations. So really excited to hear what everyone else is taking away from this next event here. I think for the next question here, really any suggestions on negotiating compensation after signing and being at a company for a bit? For example, if you're taking on additional responsibilities currently.
Heidi touched on this a little bit earlier, but knowing your level and the expectations for your role is super key in terms of having negotiations after you've already signed in and already have your compensation package, because you're already working for the company. Is really figuring out, for example, at Asana, we have success guides for each level, figuring out, okay, if I'm in this level, but I'm performing at a level above that, then I can take the success guide and bring it to my manager and have a conversation about it. So really thinking about where you're performing and what your responsibilities are in context of your level.
Definitely great advice there. Go for it, Heidi.
I think levels are super important here. There are bands, there are levels. Sometimes there is just compensation is oftentimes a zero-sum game when it comes to promotions and compensation increases in companies. So you need to make sure that you're performing really well at your level, they're adding value. That's gonna give you leverage to have these conversations, but also it's gonna make it so you're gonna get compensated more. But also at some point, you're just going to have to get promoted if you want a big jump in compensation. And so you need to have those conversations with your manager on exactly what would it take for you to get that promotion and to get that compensation increase as a result.
Thank you so much there, Heidi. And we did just have one question here in the Zoom chat on, another one here outside of Slido. Any tips on negotiating when an employer tells you that the wage in a foreign country is high for the local economy? That one's a really great one. I don't know if any of our panelists first want to take it on here.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, so any tips for negotiating when an employer tells you that the wage in a foreign country is high for the local economy? Now,
my question there would be like in regards to your personal role or them taking it to that place. I think a little bit of that is like, hey, it's the role is made for you, and so you got to look at the compensation within your area and where you live, right? Unless you're moving and it's a relocation package, then that gets a little bit more tricky because you want to make sure you're compensated for where you're going to do the work and where you're expected at. But yeah, so in terms of relocation, he just said that. Yeah, so I think that in terms of like if you're going to relocate, yeah, you should be looking at the compensation and the place that you're going to relocate to. And also that's part of the negotiation aspect is like, hey, what does the relocation package look like? Because that's something you can also leverage, right? Because getting out of your lease, getting a new lease, moving your furniture across the country can be something that's difficult, and they should try to assist you or reimburse you for something. Hope that was helpful.
looks like it was. We got a thanks over here from Marlon. So thanks for dropping that in the chat. And folks, please continue to drop any of your questions here in Slido or in the Zoom chat. We're eagerly waiting and peeping them right now to get our panelists to respond. I'll go ahead and read off this next one here. And I think you've already, our panelists have already done an amazing job answering how to really best answer some of these. But if anyone else wants to respond to this question of what is a good response to a reply of this salary is at the top of the position's pay band in response to a salary request here.
This goes back to the base salary versus bonus versus equity. I know the base salary tends to be, I'm not in accounting or a recruiter, but I know the base salary tends to be kind of very tied to this level bands and position bands, but I know bonuses are a way to get around that, and equity and other benefits. And then again, it goes back to the level. Are you being leveled correctly? If it turns out that this compensation is completely outside of your expectations, then it might be a leveling problem.
Yeah, definitely learning a lot, especially the leveling part, especially if I'm seeing that the range just isn't fitting right, then it might just be, hey, it might be something that just might not be fitting right quite then and there. I think this question I'm really intrigued about because I know this was talked about a little bit in some of our previous chats I've seen in the Slack. What advice would you give to a career changer who is looking to pivot into the tech industry as a Latinx identified professional? So I know some of our panelists here, they've shared some of their backgrounds, but if anyone wants to share a little bit about, advice that they have for these folks on how to make that career change, would love to hear from you here.
I think definitely leverage your network and see what other people's roles are within tech. Like I mentioned earlier, previously, I worked in market research for many, many years, and I just thought that was going to be my career forever because everyone around me started off in market research and continued down that path. And I really started having conversations with people in my network who work at tech companies, learned about their different roles, the different skills, their day-to-day. And that helped me identify that I really, really like being a PMM. And that's really what I want to go after. So leveraging your network and having those conversations is super important to just learn what the options are out there, and never limiting yourself and thinking like, well, I'm not going to be good enough for this role, or I don't have the skill set. Like, always go for it.
Great advice there. Rachel, Heidi, I don't know if you guys want to add one more thing there here. We have 2 more minutes here before we go into breakout room. So would love to hear from you. If not, I'll move on to the next question here.
I would like to say, do it. Do it. Don't. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. If you're trying to start in a new industry and I know not all roles and skill sets have the same demand in the job market right now, but if you are willing to be persistent and again get the help from your network and the resources and put up the work, it's totally worth it. The tech industry right now, as people here probably know, it's you will get compensated well. You will get a lot of growth opportunities, and so yeah, just do it and be very persistent about it, because I know it's not easy. I have a lot of friends, close friends, that have been trying to switch careers and get into tech, and it takes them many months and many rejections to get in. But once they do, it's totally worth it.
Awesome. And Nadia, thank you so much for dropping that question here for the final response. Rachel, we have one more minute here before we go to our breakout room. Is there any advice you'd share to someone that's making a career change and trying to break into tech here?
Listen, I feel so empowered after listening to Zoraida and Heidi talk. I wish that I had them in my ear when I was transitioning into the tech industry. I mean, +1 to everything that they both said. Go for it, and just definitely do your research, leverage your network, and know what you're worth.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. I feel like this kind of energy I need to take into it and really go rock into Friday mornings. I'll just go through my whole inbox and just bring this energy into it. Thank you so much to our panelists, to our moderators here. Thank you for really sharing your tips, advice, and experience in this, and really helping us break into, the salary negotiations here. Next, we'll be going into breakout rooms again. So similar as to what you had for the first time, you'll be seeing a window at the bottom that'll ask you to join into the breakout room. You'll have 10 minutes to interact with some of our attendees here. If not, feel free to hang out with us here in the main area. You'll be able to introduce yourselves and take this next question with you. What are you taking into your next negotiation from all of the advice you've heard from John and from our panelists here today? So you'll have 10 minutes in this breakout room. We'll see you guys in here shortly. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to connect with some other folks here and learn about some of the things you were able to take away from today's event. Up next, we have a grant presentation from one of our friends here. Jordan from 81 Cents will be presenting about their organization, on how they are empowering and making you feel prepared as you go into these negotiation talks. So without further ado, I'll have Jordan kick things off here and introduce herself.
Hey everyone, can you hear me all right? Cool.
Yep.
Hi, so I'm Jordan and I am the founder of 81 Cents, and we are a salary negotiation platform that's focused on supporting historically excluded minorities. And I'm here today to give a quick overview of who we are and a new program we just launched that I think might be relevant to a lot of individuals here today. And it just is an awesome segue given the amazing content from the previous couple of hours. Some of the panelists mentioned the importance of doing your own research to get market data, and how the most helpful resource can often be, talking to people in your network who are doing similar work to you. But I think it was Heidi who mentioned that it can be a bit awkward to have these kinds of conversations, or for those who are switching industries or roles, you might not have the right network in place to ask what you should be paid. And so that's exactly what we try to help with at 81 Cents. Our goal is to help individuals and candidates assess if they're being paid fairly and increase their confidence ahead of negotiating. And so we do this by going out and, on behalf of the candidates we support, sourcing niche data and personalized advice from a network of major leaders in tech. So if you go to the next slide, we've built a community of about 1,700 hiring managers and recruiters who provide data and personalized feedback to individuals as they negotiate, so they can feel confident and validated in what they're asking for. The majority of our advisors are recruiters and professionals working in tech. We have a bunch of people from Asana on the platform, and directors and VPs from, at this point, probably every major tech company who are advising on the 81 Cents platform. For every candidate we support, we source feedback from about 3 to 6 professionals and recruiters from our network across a bunch of different dimensions. So we ask them, how does this candidate's pay compare to market rates? What are others who are doing similar work earning? If you were in this person's shoes, how would you suggest that they negotiate? What would you do? All of these data points, recommendations, guidance, they all get compiled into a 25-page report like the screenshots you see here. We call these our market value reports. Additionally, all of our users are able to have follow-up calls with the professionals who are consulted in their review for sort of additional follow-on advice. Candidates often use our market value reports to get a sense of market rates, which we've talked about how important that is as they go into interviews and negotiations. And so these screenshots are a snapshot from a report we did for the director of people at a small startup who used her 81 cents review to go out and get another offer that was actually $50,000 higher than her current pay. And luckily, we worked with more than one candidate. We've actually worked with almost 700 candidates so far. And on average, the candidates we work with are seeing a pay increase of about 17% after using 81 cents, which is a stat we are extremely proud of. We also know that we have a lot more work to do to make a dent in the pay gap, particularly that women and individuals of color face. So with that, I want to introduce 81 grants. So our market value reports cost $195, which we recognize is a significant investment and one that's not always easily accessible to everyone. We also know that there are different levels of pay inequity with individuals of color and particularly women of color experiencing more substantial pay gaps than white women, for example. So earlier this year, we launched this program, 81 Grants, where we offer pro bono support for candidates of color for whom 81 cent services might otherwise be cost prohibitive. So we're very excited to partner with Techeria to get out the word about 81 Grants, and you can learn more about the program at 81cents.com/81grants, or you can use this QR code to get to the application. This is the first QR code I've ever created in my life, so I hope it works. And thank you for letting me use it on you. So yeah, our email's on here too. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. And thanks for listening.
Thank you so much here, Jordan. And I just tested out the QR code. For those of you who are wanting to test it out as well, feel free to pull out your phones, test it out on your camera, and it'll pop up the link and it'll take you straight to the doc where it gives you more information about the 81 grants here that Jordan just shared. Again, a great resource. And thank you so much for sharing this with our Techeria community here, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. And so we're going to take a group photo. So I'll give you a little moment, to just clean up your hair and look great. You already look great, but show your face. And then once you're getting ready, I do want to take another moment to just thank the Techeria staff for making this event happen, our partners over at Asana. So thank you. Shout out to Greg, Hillary, and Nadia. And of course, our wonderful speakers for today. I feel like I learned so much from everybody, and I definitely took some notes. So I'm going to be doing more research, especially negotiating for my next promotion. So keep an eye out, people. And so thank you for coming today. If you have any questions or any ideas or want to collaborate with us, please reach out to events@techeria.org. And I'm going to stop sharing screen so we can take a little cool screenshot. So everybody, turn on your video, smile real big. I'm going to count us down, and then Jasmine and Kat are going to take pictures for us. So 3, 2, 1, yay. All right, another pose. All right, I think we got some. Well, thank you all so much for being here. If you have any questions, please continue to reach out to us. Greg just dropped another link for Asana, so please do connect. They're hiring right now. Greg, do you want to say anything else on that?
Yeah, not too much. I'm really happy everyone attended. I hope you really got some good information. Got some information to empower you for the negotiation compensations, and definitely fill out that link if you want to know more about Asana, if you want to know about some roles. I love to talk to you. My peers love to talk to you, and just super excited everyone attended today.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. And again, don't forget to connect people on LinkedIn. If you've already connected with them, reach out and just schedule 15 minutes to connect with them, have some coffee, and make a new connection. So thank you all for being here, and have a good night.